Hey campers, Georgia, back in the man cave. Yep, had a good weekend out camping. If you didn't see it, check it out. Exciting times. But I'm back in the man cave. And yep, back at it, sharp and shinies. This time, something a little different, a fixed blade, and it's the Kukri. We've all heard about them. People refer to them as the Gurkha knife. And that's the one with the unusual shape to the blade and everything. Well, I was looking at some marble stuff again, and lo and behold, what did I find? Yep, marbles have a Kukri. Couldn't step away from that one. It's sharp and shiny. So, let's check it out. So like I said, when you think of the Kukri, most people have heard it referred to as the Gurkha knife. Kukri, I think, is the correct pronunciation. There is a lot of different spellings, and apparently it depends on where in the world they're made and who uses them. So it's kind of confusing at times, and I'm going with Kukri. And I looked at the history, and that was even more confusing. There is a couple of different ideas as to where they originated from, but that's coming up later. Like I said, came from marbles, and you can see the box. It's nice and big. It's a nice box, typical marble stuff. To me, it's almost a machete. Having looked at some reviews and read up on the stuff, a lot of people do refer to them as a machete because it is a chopper. Well, that's what everybody says. More on that. And here you can see it in the sheath. And the sheath is heavy duty. And like I said, this one is from marbles. And if you have a look on the badge right there, you can see it. It says marbles on it. And this, they just call it the marbles Kukri Mircarta black handle. And that's it. I found it in one place and one place only. And that was Chicago Knife. I found it. I looked it up. I've bought knives from them before. I think they have a really good range of knives. So I came across this and I thought, I want to look at some other pictures and see what else is going on there. So I'll put a link below to it down there so you can have a look, see it. As you can see, it's huge. You know the shape of the blade, and getting it out of this sheath is going to take some getting used to. There is the correct way to do it. We're going to have to figure that out. So as you can see, it's that big curve shape. You can't just pull it straight out. You actually got to do that. Did you see? You actually pull it out that way. Because if you don't do that, you're eventually going to slide through your sheath. This is a healthy sheath. I've seen some descriptions on the true Kukris, and their sheaths are typically something a lot more solid than just this regular leather. This is thick. It's a well-made sheath. It's solid. It's nice. I really like these buttons on there. Focus for you there. You can see it there. I liked it. And here it is here. And let me tell you, it's a monster. When I looked into these and saw this and looked a little bit more, I always assumed that, yes, they're all this big. They're huge. They are, like I said, more like a machete. This is from marbles. To be honest, it's probably a very plain modern day idea of a Kukri. When we get into the history and we start looking at them and the more original, traditional Kukri, there's a lot of stuff on here that's missing, especially on the handle, here on the blade. But the general look and size to it, you can see that it's no thin blade, is Kukri. And the modern day ones that have come out, you can now get the knives that they'll say Kukri in the description, but it's influenced by the Kukri. It's not a true Kukri knife. Very similar shape to this, but it's a knife. It's not a true traditional. You want to see a true traditional, go online and type in Gurkha knives or Kukri. And here are the two different spellings that I saw most commonly used. Now this is nowhere near traditional. Having looked at reviews and things like that, I'm going to show you this. This is a stainless steel blade. It's huge, and this thing is heavy. I can feel it. And if you look at the blade, right away, distinctive. It has that big, deep belly, and this thin piece here, it's not traditional. The belly, the thin piece is traditional. This here with the false edge is not traditional. This here is not traditional. They talk about I forget the name, the ricasso on the blade, and that's that piece. When you look at any fixed blade knife, they have that little cutout just here, and that's to help you when you're sharpening the blade where to stop on your sharpen, and it's a little indent in there. You've seen them on the knives, that's what they're for. This is really, it's almost like they want you to do that. There's no edge to it at all. It's just a giant ricasso, whatever it's called. On a traditional kukri, it's small and it's shaped a specific way. The handle, nowhere near traditional. Typically they're rounder, they have a big backing, this does, and then they'll have a raised piece in the middle here. It could do some damage on just about anybody. Now, like I said, it is marbles, and if you look there, it gives you the model number. Pakistan, yep, not China, Pakistan. And on the other side, it says marbles. And that's it. You have your Mircarta handle, which is not very traditional at all, but it works. And you know what? The reason I got this was I could afford it. Some of those traditional kukris are getting up there in the $100, $200 range, way out of my budget. They're really nice knives, and the sheaths are beautiful, traditional. If I'm going to buy that, it's going in a case, and it's a showcase. I want a knife. I want to use this. I want to see how it works. A lot of people recommend it. I do that. Get a knife you can afford that is a kukri, as close as you can get, and then try it out and see if it works for you. If it works for you and you like it, then spend some money on a better one. And here I am with the marbles version, one I could afford that'll give me a pretty good idea of how they work and how it's going to feel in my hand. Just holding it up here is tiring my arm out. That's how heavy they are. Let's get into some specs on it. So like I said, it's heavy, 3 pounds. Yep, 3 pounds. You're going to get a workout for it. Using this for chopping, it's like using an axe. It's that heavy. I'm sure there's a reason for it. This false edge that they have on here is probably to reduce the weight and to improve the balance. Now, a true original kukri, traditional, is a perfectly balanced knife. It's a throwing knife as well as a chopper or a slasher. So it's a perfect knife. The main reason most people out there choose to have one of these is because it's basically a 3-in-1. On a good one, you have to remember that the blade thickness, it's no thinner, that's for sure. It's almost 1/8 of an inch. So it's thick. And this is stainless, it's from marbles. Like I said, I've had that problem before. They never tell you what stainless it is. Traditionally, on the traditional ones, they used to make them, certainly the ones that the Gurkhas use, from car springs. You know, your suspension on your vehicle, that spring steel is what they make theirs out of. It's got to be strong. This, probably not. It's just stainless steel, pretty good stainless steel, and it'll give me a pretty good idea of it. So like I said, 3 pounds, almost 1/8 of an inch on the blade, and that's not unusual. I've seen pictures of even thicker ones than that. You have the shape of the blade, which has this, you know, you have the handle, it'll have a ricasso there, and then you have that flat. Normally on the tradition you have the flat edge, the thin piece here, and then the big piece. This piece here, the idea being for a regular knife, a smaller knife. The chores you would use this for would be a smaller knife. That's the problem I have with here. The blades typically come a little bit closer to you, and then you have that little indent in it. Doing the chores of the smaller knife, this is not well suited for that. Typically they're more flat blade at the end here. So you have the little knife, and then you got your big guy with your, I want to say, the belly here, the chopping side, which is this piece up here, which has all the weight. So the chopping motion, it's going to give you some real chop to it. Some other specs on it. The blade is the length of this blade. If I look at it right now, and I put it on my little measuring doohickey here, the whole knife, including the handle, is going to be about 16 3/4. So you've got a 4-inch handle right here. The handle, this is not a traditional handle. Typically you can see this is a flat-based sided handle. If you look at the traditional ones, it has the round handle and it has that big curved end to it here. The idea being that when you are slashing with it, obviously this is a weapon as well as an everyday used tool. That having that piece on the back there, the knife's not going to slip out of your hand. Remember the weight on here, and as you banging away, you're getting tighter and tighter, and your arm is getting tired, your hand is getting tired. It's going to be easy to slip out. So having that big base on the back there really holds it in. There's normally a raised piece here. Now, the reason for that raised piece here, which this doesn't have, is when you grip it, it stops your hand from sliding into the blade here, because they don't have the guard between the handle and the knife. So when you are using it as a stab, and by the way, the stabbing motion, it's in and then they slice out, and if you look at the shape of the blade, goes in, all he has to do is just draw it out and the shape of the blade is going to cut. That's why it was such an effective weapon and popular amongst the Gurkhas. Because of the thickness of the blade, the sharpening of the edge of the blade isn't really for skinning, but in a pinch you could probably use it for skinning. Now I'm going to go outside there and start cutting and slicing and stabbing things with it, but before we do that, let's have a look at some history on it. Pretty interesting. Yay for marbles and the price. I learned them. Now, as far as looking up the history and just looking up for some information on the Kukri, it wasn't that easy. Like I said, there was a lot of conflicting information. Where did it originate from? This day and age, its most popular place that you would find it would be in Nepal. Nepal is probably where everybody started, certainly the Western world, started to recognize the Kukri. And that came because of the war between the British Empire back then. What their correct name was, I'm not sure, but it ended up being called the Gurkha Wars, I want to say. And I think that was 1814 to about 1816, long time ago. And that's where they came across this. The British soldiers were getting into melees with their bayonets and everything. The Gurkhas were using this, and the damage they caused, they couldn't believe it. And that's where it got its reputation. This day and age, you hear about the Gurkha knife, earned its reputation with the Gurkha soldiers during the Second World War, First World War. They all carried this. It's a traditional knife amongst the Gurkha soldiers. It's one of the first things they learned to handle, how to use it, what they can use it for. This day and age, with the weaponry out there, this is now outdated. It's a traditional thing for them. And they normally are issued 2 knives. And one is for general use and practice, getting used to it. And then the second one, a little bit fancier, which would be for traditional parades and that sort of thing. So they learned how to use it. People think of this as the Gurkha knife or the Kukri. It's a weapon. Oddly enough, it wasn't designed that way. From what I can figure out, way back when, certainly in the eastern parts of the... Sorry, I had to move the knife. I saw Mary about to jump. Missy, say hello. Say hello to Mary. I had the knife on the table and I looked down and Mary was crouching ready to jump up. I had to get her out of the way. So anyway, say hello to Mary. She's here to do a traditional sniff and sheath and that sort of thing. Back to the history. So traditionally in the eastern countries in the world, this was very common style blade. And that's where when you look at the history and say, where did it come from? A lot of historians or researchers say that's where it came from. It was more of a, your scythe that you use on the farm. They had those big curved blades and they would scythe and it has that curve on it. That's where it came from. Some people say no, it came from the cavalry swords of Alexander the Great. When he came across, moving through Europe, his cavalry had a blade that looked similar to that as the cavalrymen used as a saber. Who knows? All I know is that traditionally it is more known, certainly in Nepal and in a lot of places, Mary, this is not the time for sniff and rub. It's a more traditional household knife. Yeah, they used it for everything. It's an extremely versatile knife. It's a chopper, it's a slicer, it's a stabber. You could use it for anything in the house, for wood prep, cooking, chopping up things, just about anything that you need around the house back in the day. So most families at least had one of these in their household, very common. And it wasn't really a weapon, it was an EDC, everyday carry. It was something you used every day in the fields, farming, prepping food, chopping up things, slicing things up. This can do it all, but it is heavy. I keep coming back to that. Just me holding it up here, showing you this, I can feel it in my forearm, how much weight is involved. So very versatile. A lot of people are looking, well, I don't want to say a lot, but there are guys out there that go camping, hiking, bushcrafting and that sort of thing, that are carrying these as one of their more first choice options because it can do three things. The only limitation, they say, is the weight. And that's one of the things that worries me about this. I don't think I have the strength to carry this around and do bushcraft chores. But I'm going to go outside right now and let's try it out and try it on the different things and see if I can use it. Now, I will say Marbles have done a good job on this. You can't beat their price. Personally, I'm disappointed in the handle, but I look at the price and can I really expect more? It's well made. It's solid. It's smooth. It's clean. It's well made. This piece of steel, man, you could drop this on somebody and hurt them. So how much did I pay for it? Well, with the sheath and everything, that much. It's not going to break the bank. And considering what they say you can do with this, it might be worth it. This could replace an axe, your camp knife, your camp axe, your bushcraft knife. I don't know. I have to go outside and try it out. If I like it and it works for me, I know now, after looking at the history and some more things about it and more traditional, that you can get a smaller model. Maybe that'll be even better. Let's go outside with the sharp and shiny and play. Okay, so I'm out in the South 40, putting gloves on. One of the reasons is this guy's a little bit big and heavy. It's more of a machete to me. A little nervous about using it. Just want to make sure that I'm being reasonably safe. One of the reasons I'm a little nervous is the handle. The handle doesn't have a very good grip. That Mircarta is a little slippery for me. So I have it here in the sheath. By the way, I didn't mention it has this little pouch on it here. And that's where you'd keep a sharpening stone or something like that in there. Now on a real kukri, they normally, the fancier ones, in the sheath on the back here behind the main knife is going to be two little smaller knives. One is actually a small knife that they use for skinning and that sort of thing. And on the other one is a sharpening knife. It's just like a blunt knife that you use to sharpen the blade. That's the difference. So the first thing I want to do is I'm just going to get a reasonable size log and just chop at it because I feel that this is what it's really for. Now if you're going to chop with this, this is the area here that you want to use. So I've got a log here. I'm not so sure this is sharp as it should be, but let's. pretty hard piece of wood. Now I'm going straight down on it here. Now I did read that they say you should be chopping that way into it, at a slight angle into the wood. So I'm going to hold this up and let's try it that way. It chops into it. It acts like a machete, that's for sure. Now I can tell you already, I can feel it sliding in my hand, back and forth. The only thing it's stopping from coming out of my hand is this piece here. Like I said, on the more traditional ones, this is a round handle and you can have a big round thing here. There's no way, as long as you keep a reasonable grip on it, it's going to come out of your hand. So it gets in there. This is a hard piece of wood. It's been sitting out there maturing for a while. Yeah, it's heavy. Some smaller work. Certainly the weight helps on this. Just the weight of the knife falling down. So you could make a spike or something using it to make a trap. Wow. So it's good, some good chopping power, certainly. So the heavy work is just like a machete. Now comes the part I'm more interested in, and that is the light work, the thin part of the blade. Like I told you before, this here, I'm not sure why they did that, because I would like to work right there. Now I'm working there. Yeah, it doesn't. The problem you have right here, you see that I went immediately to there. Can you see? It's too far away, the blade. You can do it, but it's not easy, and this doesn't help. It's not working as well as I thought it would. A little disappointing. It's too big for me. I think I want to look at the small ones. Like I said before, I didn't know that you could get these in a smaller size. I thought there was kind of a standard length for them. Although this does meet the Gurkha knife length, it's fairly typical for their ceremonial or their everyday use ones. But I could see why the design is so popular for everyday use. There's so many things you can do with it if you can handle it. The problem with the small use of the blade here for lighter work, the thickness of the blade. To get a really sharp edge there, you're going to have to go really deep into it, and right away you're weakening this part of it here. You get stabbing. I mean, to do some damage to this blade, yeah, it's going to take a lot. They're not designed to bend, that's for sure. Even doing this is going to take practice. Skinning, I don't know if you'd be able to skin with it. That's the problem you'd have right away, is the weight of the blade and the distance from your hand when you're skinning. I'll feel a smaller one in the future with a bit more traditional. There's nothing wrong with this. The way it's made, it's solid. It's well made, it's clean. I just don't like this. This almost looks like a mistake. So I can see why it was so effective as a weapon. I think I'm going to have a look at a littler one. One a little bit smaller and see what you can do with this. This really makes me nervous with the weight and everything. I can feel it in my arm already, just chopping away on it like this. Of course, you want to make sure that, you know, I'm thinking right now, all I'm thinking about right now is a smaller knife, maybe a camp knife length. There, a lot shorter, smaller, slightly smaller handle, and certainly a shorter blade. I think basically that becomes a really big Nasmac knife, I would think. What do? You have a look, see if you can find one you can afford. And I don't know about you, but my budget's a little tight. The handle, you know, this Mircarta is very popular on regular knives, and that's fine. But this has got so much weight, when you're swinging it, you don't get that grip on it. What can I say? Don't forget, like, share, subscribe. You know the story. Pretty sure I'll be back. Like I said before, I'm looking at saws. I'm doing some research on that and trying to figure that lot out. And that's a different story. But now I'm thinking I want a smaller one of these, because I think it would be a really good camp knife. Gonna have to do some research and see if I can come up with one I can afford. Thanks for watching, and you be safe out there, especially with these big sharp and shinies like this. 3 pounds. Ooh, that could do some damage. Just saying. Thanks for watching. See you again soon.